And here we are, downtown, right in Baltimore's Inner Harbor. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Aeronautics, and for the first time, I'm going to be flying the Hughes Hercules in Microsoft Flight Simulator, otherwise known as the Spruce Goose. This is a massive, and when I say massive, I mean really massive flying boat. Imagine the C5 Galaxy with bigger wings on the water. That's what this thing is. In fact, until NASA created an experimental solar-powered flying wing, this was the aircraft with the largest wingspan on the planet. And so one of the advantages of this thing is that it can get unbelievably close to the downtown areas. Like, for example, the center of the city of Baltimore is up that street 2 blocks, right where my cursor is. That's the center of Baltimore City. So you go 2.5 blocks. You take the pier here in the Inner Harbor, and then they'd have a couple gangways here, like you would have for a ship. That would lead you right into either an aft door or a forward door. Though sadly, this flying boat never really went flying. I mean, it went into what they call ground effect, so it got about 20 feet off of the water, and then it landed, and World War II was going on, and they said, well, don't mess around with this stuff. We need you to actually do useful stuff, and then it never got retested and basically went into storage. So this is something that never was, but we're going to be doing something really cool with this flying boat. We're going to be going from downtown Baltimore to downtown Cleveland, using the water, taking off into the air, and then going back into the water again to finish this up. So let's go ahead and get this thing going, and then I'll talk a little bit more about some caveats and other things that I had to learn. So we'll go right into the before starting checklist. So our display, or not display, our overhead here, make sure all the lights are off, which they are. Main left and main right fuel tanks, I think that's, yes, this one, open, so those are these guys, and that'll let us run our APU. I'm not doing a tutorial, by the way. If you want to see a tutorial, check out a YouTube channel called Maxwell's Virtual Aviation. Those are some really good tutorial videos on how to get you started. So I'm just mainly executing the checklists here. Alright, all left and right fuel tank valves, we'll go ahead and open those. Interestingly enough, this aircraft had 14 tanks and 8 engines. So almost twice as many fuel tanks as engines. Alright, all of those are open. We're going to close the throttle here. Actually, it's already closed. Yeah, because it's disconnected from my yoke. I'm going to talk a little bit more about why that is. Propeller, we want that at high RPM. Got it? Alright, and then we'll turn the battery on. That's not that console, that's this console. Alright, battery switch on. So we should see a amperage deflection here when we turn it on. In reality, we should also see a voltage deflection, but I don't think that's simulated. There's to be honest, this is a vanilla aircraft that's included with Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I have to say, considering it's free and comes with Flight Simulator, this is really good. There's a bunch of inoperative stuff, but I mean, it's free and you don't even have to download it. It comes automatically. It's a default aircraft. Okay, we're going to turn all generator fields on, but you won't get any electrical power because all the engines are off right now. Alright, so the battery, we don't want that running for a significant period of time. So to combat that, we're actually going to turn the APUs on. So we'll turn APU 1, APU 2 on, and this is going to start a, I believe it's a small gasoline engine when you compare it with the rest of these. I think it's about the size of a car engine. And this will let the electrical power be generated on board using a power plant instead of the battery, which would run out very quickly. All right, so we're going to prime. Well, actually, it's inoperative. So we'll just go ahead and start the APU. We should see the RPM coming up, and then we should see amperage readings here on the APU ammeters up here. So we'll go ahead and run the starters now. All right, looks good. 1500 RPM. That's the normal amount there. So at this point, we're now generating power. There's no real need to be quick about this. All right, let's see. Cowl flaps. We want to make sure that those are open on the engines. Whoops. I think this display is 6. No, it's 5. And don't worry, we'll take a look at that console in due time. All right, we want to open all these cowl flaps here. I think I saw them open anyway, but well, for giggles, let's close the number 1 so that you can see what that looks like. Okay. So you notice how all of the engines have what looks like a skirt on them, except this number 1 is flush. That's the actual cowl flap. So if I open the number 1 cowl flap, you should see that opening. And there we go. So that just lets the engines breathe when we're moving very slow. Let's see. The next thing I want to do is check the fuel gauges. We should have 50% fuel, which is more than enough. You can cross the United States using this plane. If you're careful. You have to be careful, and you have to stay out of the jet stream. Generally, that's done by when you're heading westbound, as low to the ground as possible. Eastbound, it doesn't matter because the jet stream's always west to east. Okay, let's see. Fuel gauges. Yeah, I checked that. All right, let's check the clock next. That should be, yeah, there it is. So 12:45. Yeah, that's correct. All right, altimeter. There's no. Well, actually, yeah, there is. Yep, 29.902. And then for heading indicator, there's no way that I know of to set it. This is a heading bug, which is something different. So I just press the D key, and that will set it. Because this thing that says radio compass, it doesn't function, and that really upsets me because you would be able to use this for navigation, but because it's not simulated, like no matter what you do, it'll always read this. I have to use this big honking piece of equipment, which wasn't used at the time. It's kind of really annoying. And there's, from what I can tell, I haven't found a magnetic compass in this aircraft. So everything's a heading indicator. This doesn't function. So anyway, let's see, heading indicator, that was set. We'll turn the avionics switch on, and we have no concern for the amount of time that we're going to have with these things on, because it's not going to drain the battery with the APU on. Alright, and so naturally you would think, well, we obviously can't take off here, right? So we got to start the engines and taxi out, right? Nope. Because if we started the engines, we would blast the USS Constellation, which, ooh, okay, it looks like we might be slightly drifting a little bit. We're not actually moored here. Whoops. So yeah, we don't want to destroy the USS Constellation, which is like from the early 1800s here. We'd basically blow everybody away on Pratt Street. We don't want to do that. So what are we going to do? Well, there is a, considering this is a included with Flight Simulator, this is really impressive. We can actually call for a tugboat. And we will be tugged out of the inner harbor. just look at the World Trade Center here and make sure that we start moving. We're not. Give it a little bit more gas. Okay, we're moving now. So I want to move nice and slow until we get clear of the USS Constellation. But you can, in real life, you would be radioing to the tugboat operator, but in Flight Simulator, we're going to be using this selector, I guess, transmitter. Really, what it should be called is tugboat telegraph, because that's what it is we're saying, okay, give me 50% power, you know, and then they would acknowledge, okay, he wants 50% power, and then gives me that. So we'll, like I said, we'll go nice and slow out here, and we want to get towards the center of the channel here. So let's go rudder halfway here, and we'll go up to 50% power. And this is a bit like towing in real life. You have to anticipate coming out of the turn early. All right, once we clear the aquarium, the National Aquarium, and whatever this thing is, we'll go up to 100% and make our way into the Northwest Channel, which is where Fells Point is. Alright, while that's going, let's see, we can roll our window down, because why not? You can see our four left engines over there. We'll take a look around here. So I'll give everybody a tour while we're moving here, getting out of the downtown. Actually, I think we're probably moving fast enough. Let's get up to about, or still too slow. Let's get to 75%. And it looks like we are still drifting a little bit to the right, which we don't want to do because of this doohickey here. Okay, so quick tour of the ship here. So we got our tug control box here. This is like the clipboard on the P-38. There's a couple of cheat codes here. You can view the fuel tank capacity. This is actually the only way to do it, interestingly enough, here. This is inoperative, all this stuff here. Then we've got the captain's console here. We got our throttles, we got our throttle friction. Let's see, I think these are the propeller was actually controlled via a momentary switch here. I think these are some sort of filters, but they're inactive. What is this? Oh, it's the well, this is the flaps. Can't read that. Hydraulic, I never read that or use this anyway. Hydraulic systems, pumps, I guess. I never, like I said, touch those. All right, let's go a little bit to the left here. All right, and then over here are all of our engine instrument displays. So takeoff power is 54 inches. Normal cruise is about 34 inches. We've got our RPM, and we've got something called BMEP, which I think is kind of a cheat way of getting a poor man's version of getting horsepower. All right, go ahead and straighten out here. And once we come around to the right side here, we'll be good to go full throttle on the tug. And then once we get past Fells Point, like where the anchorage is, we'll power up. I'm very familiar with these waters. I've been on a boat through here before. All right, and then we've got our trim tabs here, which are important for keeping the aircraft trim. If I unhide the console here, you can see there was actually a pitch trim wheel here. That'll be important when we start to taxi. All right, let's go to some other places here. Obviously, co-pilot location here. All right, we can turn a little bit faster now. All right, and then these big switches are the flaps. This would have been the autopilot at the time, but it's inoperative. So instead of that, we have the modern day autopilot, which serves as that. So the cheat codes using the clipboard, you can cause all this stuff to be hidden. And then, so the way I'm going to use the autopilot is a heading hold and altitude hold. I'm not going to use anything more advanced than that, because that wouldn't have been available in the 1940s. All right, we'll straighten out here and go to full power. So when we're full on the tug, it's 5 knots. See if he's now going straight. No, he's going back to going a little bit back to the left here. Let's keep it going straight. Actually, we're going to need to go to the right because we're not going to clear that point there. Go a little bit to the right. And if you are curious, yes, I do have the turning radius to get it into the inner harbor and get to that location there. You just have to go ridiculously slow, but it can be done. All right, continuing our tour. So let's see. Down here is the flight engineers station. So we've got the momentary switches for the propeller adjustment here. Secondary throttles, so they can actually control the throttles from back here. All 8 of them, whereas up here, I believe it was only 4 of them in pairs of 2. Let's see. All right, we're in pretty good shape right now. Above that are the engine conditions. So these are essentially the mixtures. And then some oil coolant flaps, which I don't think these actually operate. The cowl flaps are here. And then our magneto switches here, which are labeled as ignition. And then we got a whole ton of gauges. Just check and make sure. Okay, let's give it the command to go. Actually, we already did. All right, so this is fairly explanatory. We've got raw fuel flow gauges here, which helps a lot for characterizing this aircraft. Readings on the cowl flap, so it'll tell you the percentage open or closed, which is really nice. So everything's open. RPM gauges, manifold pressure gauges, the BHEP gauges, which is like a proxy for horsepower, but it's not horsepower. It's I think it's PSI. And then some warning lights here, and then above that we have coolant temperature, cooling flaps, oil temperature, and oil pressure for all 8 gauges. And then up here, this doesn't work. None of this works. And on the side, none of this works. So this aircraft actually had 115 volt power. So most aircraft have 28 volt power, but this is actually one of the few ones that had an AC bus. It doesn't function though, unfortunately. All right, what else can we do here? So we'll go over to 7. So this is the fuel distribution panel here, and oil pumps. These do not function. These would be the fuel gauges, but unfortunately they do not function. I wish they did. None of these work, these fire switches. We've got an OAT gauge here. We've got an altimeter here, which is nice and easy now. We know it's going to be about 20, 30 feet because we're sitting on sea level right now. And then our clock, which is appearing to read local time right now. And then our fuel gauges here. And then electrical panel here. All right, it's time to turn. Got oil dilution here, which is used to help the engine start when it's cold. We've got our inverters, generator fields here, and then engine starting switches, fire suppression, which is inoperative, and then APU stuff over here. All right, let's take a look and see. We're going to want to turn tighter. Let's go to full left rudder. All right, and once we get out to the anchorage right here, we should be able to start 4 of our engines, and we'll taxi that way. All right, I'm happy with that. So we'll remove the turn at this point, go back to full center here, and we'll keep touring the ship a little bit here. Oh, I think I forgot to mention up here. So we have our lights panel here. None of this stuff works down here. It's only these guys up here are the only things that work, and this doesn't even work either. Oh, check it out, it's the moon. Right there. Nice view. So the one disadvantage of this aircraft is, although you can land anywhere there's water, and you would be surprised, you would say, oh no, you can't take this to Nebraska. Well, guess what? Nebraska has enough water. Nebraska has something called Turtle Creek Lake, which is 11 miles wide and 1 mile wide. Or sorry, 11 miles long and 1 mile wide. And that would be enough. All right, let's keep touring the ship. We move back from here. The next thing we'll find is the radio operator's position, which is right here. So all of the avionics to run the most of the radios would be back here, like communications and sorts. And then even further back, we've got the navigator station, or at least I believe it's the navigator station. There's more radio equipment here, but I imagine this is where the navigator would be. There'd be no GPS, so you would need to use a bubble sextant, just like I did with the P-38 Lightning, and I intend to do it with this aircraft. Using the plethora of windows, there's plenty of opportunities to view stars, and it's unpressurized, which means that the windows are going to be non-distorted. Right, we're getting a little bit close to whatever this thing is. Go a little bit to the left here. All right, and then we've got our coffee station right here. That's very important for these long voyages. Unfortunately, the one of the downsides, there's 2 downsides with this engine, with this aircraft. One of the downsides is it's really slow. it only goes about 200 knots at its absolute fastest. The other disadvantage is it takes about 10 feet of draft, so you can't land this thing in a marsh. Anyway, there's some seating back there, and then below there's a ladder that leads down to a cargo area. I don't think that is simulated, but yeah, you get all this, which is actually really nice. Alright, that's enough for the left turn here. We'll go back to center. And once we reach this 02 MD, we should be able to do this. So, let's see. Coming up to Fells Point now. The Johns Hopkins Medical Institute, JHMI, is up that way. And then over where the churches are is Patterson Park, but I don't think we have... It's this big green square here. I don't think we have quite the elevation to tell. But we'll be able to see when we get further down. All right, let's get lined up here as much as we can, and then once we're lined up, we'll go ahead and cut the tug line and start 4 engines. So, fair warning with this aircraft, when you start the engines, you will move and idle, and there is no way to stop moving once you start moving. That's one of the reasons why I'm not starting the engines until we get out to a maneuvering area, because once they're started, you can't stop, and there's no way to turn the aircraft other than throttling up the engines, which is not something you want to be doing in tight spaces. And that also means you continue moving even faster. All right, we're good. So we'll go ahead and have the tug power down. And once we're stopped, oh, we're already stopped. Thank you very much. We are finished. Boom. Gone. And now we'll go ahead and start the engines. So let's see. We go to this panel. Starting engines, we'll turn magnetos. We're going to start 7 and 8 first. Magnetos for 7 and 8 on. Mixture for 7 and 8 open. Let's see, I want 7. Nope, I wanted 8. Alright, and then we're going to give it a quick prime. We'll prime 7. Start 7. Alright, and that should give us electrical power off of that engine.
Delta 47 traffic says
Oh
the
my
November
God,
7
no.
Tree 5 Papa Hotel 7 miles northeast inbound visual runway tree 1.
God, that's so annoying. Alright, we got to keep going because you see we're already moving. Alright, prime 8, start 8. Magnetos 1 and 2 on, engine condition 1 and 2 on, prime 1, start 1. Prime 2, start 2. All right, we're safe. Let's take, actually, we should check our engine instruments real quick, make sure everything's good here. All right, we're good. Let's take engine 1 up to about 15 inches. Well, actually, we'll use RPM. Take it up to about 1500 RPM. This will get us to come around. And then we'll bring up, you can see it's a pretty good turning radius that we've got. Once we've turned out to where we want to be, we'll bring engine 8 up to about 1500. Well, I should say we control 2 at a time, right? All right, let's bring 7 and 8 up to 1500. So that was 1 and 2 I controlled there. All right, 7 and 8 are now up to 1500, so that should let us pick up a little bit of speed here. All right, after starting, lights as desired, so we can go ahead and turn our position lights on. Now, there is a reason why the APU is still running, and that is the engines don't generate significant horsepower until about 1450 RPM. And since we're basically just doing that now and might throttle down later, it makes sense just to leave the APU running. It's not hurting anything anyway. And then we'll shut that down at the end. All right, let's get our first VOR plugged in here. So that's going to be BAL VOR. Which is 11510. There we go. So that's given us 40 and 7.3. So what I plan to do, because this is kind of cheating, is I think, yeah, if you put this message display up, it'll hide the entire thing here. Although I think there's also, might be a better way of doing it. Like if I, no, that's still... There we go. Yeah, that's the thing to do. Just give you a black screen there and then get all of this information, which this should be causing the radio compass to move, but like I said, it's not simulated. So, SOL. All right, let's go into a high-speed step taxi. So we should be able to do 2000 RPM and get a reasonable speed up. It's not that bad. For the purposes of the video, I will go back to the GPS so you can see how our speed compares. So we're doing about 6 right now. We can do, this is actually I guess you could call it like a hull taxi. There's also a high-speed step taxi that you can do as well. And we'll do that once we get out to the Middle Branch, which is the next step. That's where the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel is. When I get that far out, we should be good to do a proper step taxi. and that will get us to about 25 knots. So I think the anchorage is out there. This is Boston Street. Natty Bow is somewhere up there. Actually, I think it's that building right there underneath the moon. I think that's where Natty Bow is. And then this building, which I know what it is, but well, I say I recognize it, but I don't know what the name is. Doing about 7 knots right now. I'm curious to know, are we going to do 8? If I trim up, we might be able to do 8. I don't want to be on a step taxi where we are now. We're too far inland. But let's try 4 degrees of pitch trim and see if we pick up any extra speed. See, that's where we started from. There's also a hatch window here which can open up. I always forget how to do it though. There's like a handle in a really weird place. Open, pull down, then aft. There it is. Yeah, so that's really cool. It's really cold where I am though, even though it looks like summer, so I'm just going to keep that shut because I'll just feel colder if I leave that open. Alright, we're drifting too far to this side, so let's make sure we're up at 40% here. And then bring this back some. Alright, and so you might be wondering, when are we going to take off? And the answer is when we get to the Key Bridge. We'll get all the way out to the Key Bridge, and then once we get underneath of it, we'll go. And sadly, that bridge has collapsed. So what you're looking at now on your screen is sadly the reality. But at the time, there was a giant water cliff that extended up 200 feet here instead of a bridge. So I had to download the bridge, even though the bridge is gone. So, but I liked the Key Bridge. It was a really nice landmark, so it is welcome to stay on Flight Simulator as long as it wants to. Alright, and I think we're good, so we'll do an RPM match now. So we're at about 2050. Come back to 2050. I think I saw 8 knots temper. Oh no, it's 6. Okay. Well, if anything, we're slowing down. So then we'll just bring this trim back to neutral. So as far as I know, this device here is a also a heading indicator, even though you would think it'd be a compass. So if I press D again, you should see this suddenly shift. Yeah, see? So when you see the shift, it means that it's not a compass, and I can't locate a compass in here, which is really annoying. Alright, so this is Fort McHenry. This is where the poem Star Spangled Banner was written that eventually would have music written with it and became the United States national anthem. Further back is Cruz, Maryland port, and then the highway you can see here is I-95. It disappears here into the Fort McHenry Tunnel. So I-95 resurfaces right there at what used to be a toll plaza, but they now do video tolling, and then takes that overhead bridge up there. But then this bridge to the right here is I-895, which is the Harbor Tunnel Thruway. And that then takes this bridge, which dives underneath of this one, and then goes into East Baltimore over there by, I forget what that neighborhood is up there, but anyway, down here we're in Canton, we're coming to Dundalk. There's a huge pile of coal exports are in this area. And now we're coming into Middle Branch. So this is where the big ships, like the ocean-going ships, this is where they are. Okay, we're directly above the Fort McHenry Tunnel right now, so at this point I'm feeling comfortable. We'll go ahead and start engines 5, 6, 3, and 4. And just to confirm, yes, those are in idle, so we won't have a sudden surge in speed as we start. Alright, 5 and 6 magnetos on, 5 and 6 conditions open. Prime 5, start 5. Prime 6, start 6. Whoops, that was 7. Alright, what did I do? So 5 started, but not 6. Or did it? Yeah, 6 did not start. Wait a minute, that's 5. 5 didn't start. So I think I started 5 when I meant to start 6. So many engines I can't even keep track of them. Alright, so 3 and 4 are the only ones that need to be started. Alright, 3 and 4 are open, 3 and 4 magnetos on. Make sure it's actually number 3. Prime 3, start 3. Prime 4, start 4. Alright, all 8 engines are running. And the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel originates from that building right there, and you can see the highway stretching away towards the southwest. So we're above the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel right now. And at this point, I'm now ready for step taxi. So this will take us to 22 knots. We're going to do flap up. Let's see, wing flaps are over here. Those are up. Propeller, we want that in high RPM. Throttles to 2,000, and we're going to trim 4 degrees up once we get onto the step, and possibly come back to about 1,800 RPM. We're there, bringing the throttles back. Going too fast. We're at 35 knots. Alright, let's just cut these two. You know what I'm actually going to do instead? I'm going to cut these right now and change my controls. Alright, let's try this again. So right about there, 1800 I think is what we want. So the issue was I couldn't control the throttle there fast enough. And at this speed, the rudder becomes effective. There's no water rudder, but the aircraft rudder works. I'm surprised I haven't seen the Key Bridge yet. We should be able to see that now. I wonder if they updated it so that now it just straight up is gone. It's funny. Well, I guess it's not funny. It's interesting. One of the, you can tell people are dedicated to it because we should be pitched up to 4 degrees now on the step. And we're doing 23 knots. So this is a perfect step taxi. Alright, we're coming up to the water speed bump now, so we can expect the entire ship to crash over that. And here we go. It's really annoying. You find those all over the bay. Anyway, what I was saying regarding the Key Bridge is someone actually said, sadly, this collapsed today, on the day it collapsed. So somebody actually wanted to download the bridge, I guess. But it's pretty odd timing, if you ask me. So the Key Bridge is out here. On the left, I think, is Seagirt, and these are the containers for the container ships. The big container ships would be here. So this is the real marine terminal here. And then the town of Dundalk is out this way. And then that's Fort Carroll. Once we pass Fort Carroll, we're beyond it. A little bit too far this direction, so I'll go ahead and start going back here. Back to the middle. And it doesn't simulate it, but I mean, we are a boat. We would have a good wake. This boat weighs 400 tons. So, you know, by boat size, it's a ship. And there would be a real good draft. All right, I'm not seeing the Key Bridge. I legitimately think that they updated the model. I just installed it, so I had no idea what to expect. But I'm not seeing it. It looks like they just straight up deleted it. Which, you know, at least it's not the annoying water mountain or water wall, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it was literally as high as the bridge. We should also be seeing a power pylon, because there's a power line bridge as well above here, but I'm not seeing that one either. That's funny. They put trees on Fort Carroll. That's not an island. That's a concrete block. It's a very large concrete block. And then this last one out here, this marine terminal, I believe that's Sparrows Point. And I believe the largest ships in Baltimore go into Sparrows Point, because out there where the horizon drops, that's the Chesapeake Bay. Alright, I'm seeing cars out there, so now I'm confused. Alright, I guess the bridge is gone, but so too is the really annoying water thing, so I really hope that it's not going to count as colliding with a vehicle. That would really, really blow. But if it does, I mean, we're pretty much ready for takeoff, so we'll just restart where we are and take off. So it looks like the cars are either deleting or turning around at that point. So this is the Baltimore Beltway, I-695. And this is where the Key Bridge was. So that is correct, it's gone. That's Fort Carroll right there. All right, we have passed Fort Carroll. We are ready for takeoff. Okay, the before takeoff checklist in this aircraft is a little bit interesting. So the first thing we're going to do, flight controls check. Flaps 10 degrees up. That's 10. Trim 4 degrees up. I believe it's already set there, but let's confirm. Yep, we're at 4. Propeller high RPM, instruments check. Everything looks good. So the lights, we'll set those. Let's see, we don't need interior lights. I don't even, yeah, the anchor light doesn't even work, so we'll just flip landing lights on for giggles. And at this point, we're close enough to take off that we can power down the APU. APU 1 off and 2 off. And this is the sound that we hear approaching takeoff. There we go. You hear that? It means takeoff is imminent. Canopy closed and locked on both sides. Side windows closed as well. Alright, so we're going to do our run-up check now. So throttle 1000 RPM, propeller low RPM, manifold pressure 30 inches, and we'll hold this for 30 seconds. Good. So we'll come back to idle. Propeller to high RPM. And let's see. So we want to fly to Baltimore. The radial, we're 83.2, but we want... it's 83 from, but we want 2, so that's going to be rounded to 90. So we'll set the heading bug of 270 for initial. We're going, whoops, not that low. Geez, we're not a submarine. All right, our cruise altitude is 4,000 feet, nice and low. This plane is supercharged, but with the winds going westbound, there's no reason why you would want to go higher than is necessary to clear the Appalachians. Okay, so that's it. We're ready for takeoff. So we're going to go to 49.5 inches. Make sure I see this elevator. Yeah. 49.5 inches, and then elevator 5 degree up. Okay. Just make sure that we're facing the right direction. Yeah, this is fine. We've got plenty of distance. looking for 115 on the climb. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, now. So we're gonna wait until we're on step. All right, there's step, so we're gonna induce a 5-degree pitch up. We should pop off the water around 70 or 80. You know you're getting close when you hear that. Okay, we're up. So we're gonna come down to about 45 and a half, 44 actually. There's 100, flap up. And we'll come back to 43 inches. We're looking for 115. All right, turning to heading 270. So we should be flying right over BWI. All right, there's 1,000 feet. Okay, I see BWI, perfect. All right, so climb checklist, throttle and propeller as desired. We're fine where we've actually come back to 2550 actually. .43 inches for climb power. It will decrease as we climb, so we have to increase it. Trim as desired. Instruments checked. We have a quick climb, so we'll do the rest on cruise. Whoops, that's BWI. All right, cowl flaps as desired. We'll leave them. Oh wait, no, that's cruise. Trim, that's set, and engine instruments monitor. Okay, so we're good. I want this to hide because I can't read my gauges very well with that there. All right, we should be heading straight for the BAL VOR. And there's where we started from. Now we're here. I believe the next radial after this is going to be about 300 or so. We'll consult the nav log just to double check that. But we're actually at our cruising altitude right now, so we're leveling off right at 4,000 feet. Autopilot on. That should bring us back to 4,000 feet. And then our heading indicator set for 300. Man, my frame rate's just taking it right now. I don't know what's going on. Alright, so we should be steering looks like about 320, well actually no, not 321. looks like about 323 or something like that. Alright, and so we're pretty stable now. We'll go ahead and execute the remainder of our cruise checklist. So for cruise, we'll do the maximum continuous, and then I'll explain a little bit more about some other settings. So for that, that's 43 inches and 2,700 RPM. So we'll go up to full RPM in 43 inches. So we're cruising at our climb power, and the reason we're doing that is because we can. That demonstrates the speed of this aircraft, and it also demonstrates the amount of fuel that it burns. And we'll do a burn rate calculation a little bit later. So throttle and propeller as desired. Trim, the autopilot is taking care of that. Instruments, we should check those. Everything looks good. I will leave the cowl flaps open because of how hard we're working the engines. Fuel quantity, actually that's a good opportunity for us to do that now. All we need to do is just turn the lights off, and we're basically done the checklist. So we'll leave position on. Landing lights can turn off. Alright, let me make sure I'm on the right radial. So we're supposed to be following the 305 radial. And we're not, so let's go down to 305. See what that does. And then we should get our next VOR in here, which is Frederick. That's 109.0. And press the D key to resync the heading indicator here. All right. Okay, so fuel quantity. So all that stuff, it's like, oh yeah, but how much fuel did you burn? Next to nothing. We're still at 50%. This aircraft can stay aloft for almost a day. So we'll go over to the fuel panel here. And the way to figure out how much fuel you're burning, if you take a look at this fuel flow gauge right here, it's marked off in whole numbers. These whole numbers are gallons of fuel per hour times 10, even though it doesn't say it. I've spent a lot of time characterizing this aircraft, and the POH isn't available online, and the aircraft never flew in real life. So guess what? I had to do a bunch of performance testing and be a test pilot to get this aircraft to where I can maximize its capability. So right now we're reading about, let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8.5. So what that means is this engine 5, is burning 85 gallons per hour. And we have 8 engines. So that means 8.5. Think of it this way. A really easy way to do it is to take the number on one of these gauges, multiply it by 80. 8.5 times 80. So what that means is we are burning 5,984 gallons per hour. That rounds to 6,000 gallons per hour. And I'm guessing that was probably exactly 6,000 gallons per hour based on what little information there was available on this aircraft. So we started with 50% fuel. So the full fuel amount on here is 14,280. So full tanks is 14,280 gallons. think something was wrong with my calculation. So 8.5 times 80. There we go. 680. I don't know how I got it 6,000, but it's 680. I should have been able to figure that one out using my own intuition. But anyway, so if the number on the gauge is 8.5, multiply it by 80, that gives us 680 gallons per hour. So now if I do 14,280, that's the maximum amount of fuel in the tanks, divide by 2, because we're using 50% fuel. And then I already forgot what it was, 680. Divide by 680. Means that we will be running the engines for 10.5 hours before we run out of fuel. Our current speed, we're doing 151 knots true. And for this aircraft, that's fast. So in 10.5 hours times 151 means we can do 1,585 nautical miles on a half tank at maximum continuous power. To give you an idea, from Baltimore, to get you out 1,500 nautical miles, that'll take you to eastern Montana, Salt Lake City, Las Cruces, New Mexico, El Paso, Texas, Monterey, Texas, Tampico, Texas, whoa, did I say Monterey, Texas? I meant Monterey, Mexico. Apologies about that. Tampico, Texas. Oh my gosh, I did it again. Tampico, Mexico. God. It'll take you to Belize. It'll take you to Montserrat and Antigua. North, it'll take you to all the way up to Iqaluit, which is near Baffin Bay. It'll take you to Churchill, Canada, and it'll take you to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. That is half a tank at maximum continuous power. The only catch is you obviously need water to land. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the characterization of this aircraft that I had to do. So one of the things that I did was put together a time to climb, fuel distance time to climb table, which I'll put up on the screen now. So you can see takeoff with 50% vanilla weight and a climb speed of 105. VY I later found is 115, so 105 is VX. And this uses the standard sea level conditions. So this is kind of using our performance capabilities here. The aircraft will climb to 20,860 feet before it will finally level off at a final VY of 109 knots. That's one way that I located what VY was. Now, realistically, your most fuel efficient best range speed can only be maintained up to 15,000 feet. So I would not recommend taking this aircraft above 15,000 feet. The only time you're ever up that high is if you're catching a really, really, really good wind, or you're hopping over the Rockies. So to get to 15,000 feet, it'll take you 15 minutes. It'll take 179 gallons of fuel. It'll take you 29 miles. Now we'll talk about the V speeds. That's the next thing that I had to do. Although, actually, let's switch over to the next VOR. There's Frederick. It looks like we're at about 107 radial. Let's check the... Yeah, we should be at about 109 radial, so that's actually correct. We're right about where we want to be. So let's do 315 for, because it looks like we've closed our off distance here for the heading bug. We'll set 315, and it looks like Frederick doesn't have DME because it's not giving us a distance. So we're about 30 miles from Baltimore. We should be almost directly over Frederick. And pretty soon we'll be in the cone of uncertainty. So I think I could see the Frederick Airport right there. Maybe I don't. Well, let's see. That's I-70 there. So that's the town of Frederick, and it's north of Frederick, so it should be right around here. All right, looks like we're in the cone of uncertainty now, so it's going to be 90 degrees, so it's going to be off this way. Oh, that's it right there. Okay. So that's Frederick. Let's take about 5 degrees to the left here. So the outbound, we want to be on Frederick, is going to be 316. That's the outbound radial we want. Okay, so we're good now. Actually, let me plug in my next one. So that's Hagerstown. That's going to be 109.8. All right, so the next thing that I had to do with this aircraft was find the V speeds, right? V speeds are very important for figuring out how to safely operate the aircraft. And so what I did was I found VSO, that's stall speed in the landing configuration, so flaps full down. This airplane has a very slow stall speed, 60 knots. Not even my Mooney has a stall speed that... Well, actually, wait a minute. No, that's miles per hour. Never mind. So really slow. For an aircraft the size of a 747, a stall speed of 60 knots is crazy. That being said, never, ever hit VSO when you're below like 3,000 feet, because when it stalls, holy cow, you're looking at the ground. And I'm not talking this. I'm talking like this. Then I also had to find VS1, which is the stall speed with no flaps. That was 75. VX, that's the maximum rate of climb. Simply found by putting in climb power and pitching up until the speed continues to decrease at a significant rate. VY was simply based on whatever speed I reached the aircraft ceiling at and maintain. and then add 5 knots to convert the value for temperature back to sea level. So it's 109 at altitude and 115 at sea level. Then VME, which stands for maximum endurance. That's pretty simple. It's just you keep pulling back the throttle until you're not able to maintain. What you should see is you pull the throttle back a little bit, you see the speed creep a little bit back, and then stop. Then you pull the throttle back a little bit more and see the speed creep a little bit back more. And then you continue doing that until at some point the speed won't stop decreasing, and then it starts to very quickly approach the stall speed. When you've reached that point, you've hit what's called the maximum endurance speed, which for this aircraft is 103 knots. Alright, we're over Frederick right now, and these are isn't this absolutely gorgeous? These are the Catoctons, and we're going so slow, it's like we're flying in an airship. That's one of the reasons why I love flying this thing so much. So this is I-70 going up into the... oh wait, no, that's 15. I think I-70 is actually directly below us. I said I-15, I meant US-15. It's a pass, but it's not named. Okay, I think I see that there. So yeah, this is the first proper mountain range in the Appalachians, the Catoctons. It barely reaches 1,000 feet, but I mean you can see the elevation contrast. So it's a mountain range, but it's very low. It's not the easternmost mountain. That would be Sugarloaf Mountain. For that, I'd have to go outside, and I'm going to position the top of the tail, directly below it. That's Sugarloaf Mountain out there. Okay, going back inside. So, anyway, maximum endurance speed is not the same as the most fuel efficient speed. The maximum endurance speed means the longest that you can keep the airplane aloft. So that's by this. So if we position all the way down here at 103, that is the lowest amount of power and the lowest amount of energy that the engine needs to keep the plane in the sky. All right, let's see, we're at 330. We want to get down to 316. So I'll just keep watching that. All right, and then after the Catoctin is a brief valley here, and we should be almost directly over I-70 now, I would think. And then you have South Mountain, which is the next one. South Mountain is about 1,300 feet. Now down to 325 radial. That's I-70 down there. Okay, yeah, there's the pass through South Mountain. So the Appalachian Trail actually is on South Mountain, and when this goes into Virginia, it goes up to 3,000 feet, and then it becomes the massive Blue Ridge. You can kind of see it there, and that continues down into North Carolina and eventually grows to over 5,000 feet tall. Now we're in what's called the Great Valley. When you cross into Virginia, the Shenandoah River begins, and this is what's called the Shenandoah Valley. right, so after that is the next speed is VMR, which stands for V maximum range, and to find that, it's a real simple equation. It is VME, which is 103 knots, divided by 0.86. So that brings you to 126. So if we wanted to get the maximum range out of this plane, like if we had a pretty significant headwind and I'm like, we can just make California, but only if we're the most fuel efficient we possibly can, we fly 126. After that is what's called V long range cruise, 132 knots. V long range cruise is basically the speed at which you would fly with a 5% hit to range. After that is what I call V max cruise. V max cruise is a speed that you get when using a value on the POH. Actually, it wasn't a POH, it was a snippet from the POH, which I believe is featured in the Maxwell Virtual Aviation tutorials. Okay, we can see Hagerstown now. And for Hagerstown, we want to be about 127. Oh, we're actually there right now. We're heading straight for Hagerstown right now. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, if you use the generic version on that shows up to be 115. Keep in mind though that this aircraft had never flown, which means you have to take that number with a grain of salt, because like there were no test flights and there was no capability to digitally simulate the aircraft back in the 1940s when this thing was built. So who knows if it actually was 115. I think I found in the simulator that it's actually 126. Anyway, moving on. The next thing is what's called V maximum continuous power, and that's 142. Hey, guess what? We're V maximum continuous power. So we're actually doing 144, which might be caused by temperature. Let's see, are we at 40? Yeah, we're at 43 inches and 2,700. Okay, so I guess we're just getting a little bit better performance today out of the engine. That's pretty good. And then we can use something called VTO, which is V takeoff power, and that's the fastest that we can go without damaging the engine. That's 149. It's not what I would consider a cruise speed in any way. And so yeah, those are the V speeds, and now that I have that information, the only thing that I had to do was figure out how the fuel consumption changes with altitude. And so for that, all I do is I fly V maximum range at different altitudes. And so what I found was that the burn rate or I should say miles per gallon rate was 0.251 miles per gallon at 5,000 feet, 0.262 at 10,000 feet, and 0.244 at 15,000 feet. So it was highest at 10,000 feet, a little bit lower at 5,000 feet, and a little bit lower than that at 15,000 feet. So by the fuel flow gauge, that would be 6.7 is what you should see on 6.7 is what you should see on the fuel flow gauge up here. And if you were at 10,000 feet, you would see about 6.9. And if you were at 15,000 feet, you would see about 8.1. Keep in mind that your true airspeed is going to be higher, so it compensates for the fact that your engine is going to be working harder. So for VMR, which is the best range out of this aircraft, at 5,000 feet, it's 2550 RPM and 35 inches. At 10,000 feet, it's 2550 and 35 inches. At 15,000 feet, it's 2700 RPM and 38.5 inches. The aircraft is supercharged, and you can maintain maximum continuous climb power until about 12,000 feet. Above 12,000 feet, your maximum manifold pressure will start to reduce, and you have to climb at a decreasing power as you continue up. All right, we're coming up to the next ridge before Hagerstown. Actually, I believe this is southbound. I think I might have been ahead of myself earlier. Yeah, this looks right. So this should be Harper's Ferry then. You should see the Shenandoah. Yeah, okay, that's the Shenandoah. So I was a little bit off there. That's the Blue Ridge. This is South Mountain. Alright, so heading bug we're following is 310. And this says we should be doing 317, so it looks like you subtract 7 from the radial to be on, and that seems to give a good direction. Next is Johnstown. That's 113.0. And we've got it. So 141 minus 7. Well, actually, we need to. It's going to be 325 minus 7. So about 319, I think, would be the right heading on that. This one has DME, so we actually know the distance now. I guess that would be a little bit more information than you would get on the radio compass. Because to get our position, we would have to plot 2 VORs, I believe. But there's nothing we can do about that. It's either you do full celestial navigation or you do pilotage. There's no doing VOR without DME, unfortunately. So from where we are now, it should be, I think, about another hour to reach Cleveland. So once we reach Johnstown, once we reach Johnstown, it looks like we'll have about 86 miles to go. So we're about 110 away right now. Actually, no, it'd be 156. So we're doing about 145. So the true airspeed in knots should be somewhere around 150. And that would be an hour from Johnstown. It's another 25 miles after that. So about an hour and 10 minutes or so. that shadow. That shows you just how big this thing is. It's incredible that that's one of the reasons why I started from the inner harbor, is because it shows you how incredibly close you can get to the center of a city just by being able to float on water. And the inner harbor has something like 18 feet of draft, so this boat would have no problems getting into it. I guess one cool thing, even though this plane is so slow, you fly so low that it's kind of like having a helicopter tour that's just like several miles long. I mean, this is incredible. You know, when you're in a jetliner, you're up at 35 or 40,000 feet. So these mountains would just appear as splotches of green. But here you can actually see the 3D nature of them, and see like all these little homes and stuff in farms and whatnot in these tiny little valleys and hollows. It's really cool. after Johnstown is Elwood City, 1158. My guess is this is the Johnstown Airport. That's probably the Johnstown VOR right there. This aircraft is really cool at night too. It's really annoying. There's no gauge lights, but I'll show you a quick trick. So if you don't want this ridiculously bright dome light on, which is just absolutely blinding, but you still want to see the gauges, what you do is you turn the dome light off and turn the wing lights on. And the wing lights will actually bleed in enough ambient light from the wings here, just enough for you to see the gauges. So that's really good when you're navigating out in order to be able to get that to work. Okay, yeah, there's Johnstown, so it's probably going to be, yeah, it's due north of us right now. Let's see if we can get Elwood City yet. We can. And it shows we're about 126, and it's got DME too. So let's see, that's going to be 306. And the heading we want to be using looks like about 322 or something like that. Look at that. That's quite a bridge. So Flight Simulator got whatever this is correct. But it did not get the key bridge, which is 5 miles from a major population center, correct. Go figure. I should also mention that at this point we have crossed the Eastern Divide. This is the Conemaugh River underneath of us, and it will drain into the Allegheny, which becomes the Ohio, which drains into the Mississippi, which drains into the Gulf of Mexico. But we're going to be crossing the Northern Divide as well, which will bring us back into, well, I guess you could call it the Eastern Divide, because it'll bring us into the draining area of Lake Erie, which then flows into Lake Ontario, which then flows into the St. Lawrence River, which flows into the St. Lawrence Bay, which flows into the Atlantic Ocean. That might be Gulf of St. Lawrence. I might have gotten that wrong, but anyhow, it'll be back into Atlantic Ocean drainage. And interestingly enough, it's only about a mile before Lake Erie. I've been there before. This must be Chestnut Ridge. I think this is the last major ridge of the Appalachian Mountains. If you watch my train videos, don't try to scratch that, whatever this is. That's not on your screen. I've done that before if you already have. So if you have, no worries, I've done it. On train simulators, I've come through here on the Pennsylvania, the Juniata, and I think I did a train 33 one time. So this is the last major, what I call the western gate of the mountains. After this is the Appalachian Plateau, and we're almost to Latrobe. Latrobe is somewhere out that way. Heck is this thing? It looks like a rocket assembly building. It's like 500 feet tall. It's taller than the hill, well taller than the hills that are surrounding it. Interestingly enough, there is a place in West Virginia called Rocket Center, but this is not West Virginia. We're in western Pennsylvania. This should be the Allegheny River. Out that way is Pittsburgh. So I was thinking that there would be a significant amount of wind out of the west, but that doesn't seem to be going on, because I noticed that we were getting off track of Elwood City. But since I had plugged in the exact same, okay, there it goes. So that means we're heading a little bit south. Okay, so let's try 5 degrees further north. Yeah, because it was showing us as getting further north. But right now it's showing us as getting further south. I want to see this VOR. I want to go right over it. And then the next one after Elwood City is Youngstown, and that's 1090. At this point, we're entering the cone of uncertainty for Elwood City, and I don't think we're going to get anything less than 1 nautical mile because of our altitude. So we should be going directly over it. After Elwood City, we're going to be following, looks like a 334 distance. Which means we should add 5, so like 339 is what we should set on the... Alright, let's see if we can find this thing. See it, but it should be somewhere in this area. Alright. And now it's time. So, what did I say? 339. This is interesting. So this time it's giving me a DME readout, but not a bearing. Very strange. So Youngstown is not going to tell me. So what we're going to have to do is watch this distance counter, hold our current heading, and when the distance counter starts increasing, see if we can pick up the next VOR, which is Shutdown 112.7. Hearing the VOR identify itself. Well, we can get Shutdown at this point. There we go. Okay, good. So Youngstown must be like some sort of DME thing. Heck, if we're less than 40 nautical miles, we might as well... Yeah, we are. We might as well just switch straight to Shutdown right now. And we want a 2 of 302. So we should wait until we get a from of 122, and then we'll turn towards it. We're actually already almost there. So 122 is going to be 302, but then for some reason we need to add, well, it's the wind, we need to add 5, so we'll turn left heading 307 when the radial is 122. Actually, let's do it when it's 123, because it'll take a little bit more distance to make the turn. And I'm seeing straight streets, so you know what that means? We have just exited the Appalachian Mountains. We're now on the plains of Ohio. not bad. Even without good direction, we still managed to get within. That's ticking down pretty fast. We're going to get really close to the Youngstown VOR. Even realizing that we couldn't get exactly there. All right, there's 123. So we're going to do a left turn heading 307. Wow, that's incredible. We're going to be less than a mile from the Youngstown VOR, even without being able to receive its directionality. It's really amazing how reliable VOR to VOR navigation is. Half a mile, my goodness. Yeah, and that was a half a mile. That's impressive. This one I might have actually seen. This circle. Yeah, see that pavement circle? Right above, between the fuselage and the wing. This right here, I think that's the actual VOR. So that one we might have actually had a visual on. Alright, so we're at 122. That's exactly where we want to be. So if it ticks down again to 121, I'm going to take another 10 degrees to the right. We're 22 miles, and that's about the point that our descent begins. And we should be almost visual at this point. We should get the skyline of Cleveland right about here in about 5 minutes or so. We just ticked down again, so we're getting too far north, so we should take 5 degrees out. So let's go 302 and see what happens with this. Alright, now I'm seeing 122 again. So we've come south again. And we'll split the difference. Let's go to 305.
Foxtrot tree 15 miles north inbound visual runway 19er.
I cannot stand. There we go. I cannot stand those Microsoft AI voices. They're terrible. The ones they had in Flight Simulator 2002 were better than this. So this has been at 122 for the past like 5 minutes, and we're only 4 miles away and it hasn't switched yet. So we're gonna pass more or less directly overhead of this VOR. So it should be, we should be able to make visual contact with it. Alright, I'm seeing a building there. That might be it. That looks just like the one at Youngstown. So if it ticks from 122 to 123 next, then that is what I'm going to expect. Because at some point we're going to get off of that heading. So I think we're going to pass just to the south. Oh no, we're gonna pass to the north because it's it's 121 now. We're in the cone of uncertainty, so I'm not really worried about it. Still, it's dead ahead. Okay. That's probably it right there, that circle. Yeah, now it's moving. Yep, cone of uncertainty, so it's just straight up disappeared. It's not even going to tell you where it is. It looks like we've passed it. Okay, so it was that thing down there. And yeah, we more or less flew directly over it. Alright, so at this point we're almost to the coast, and we are going really fast now, so I actually want to bring this down. We're going to go to maximum cruise now, and let the autopilot trim up for us. So maximum cruise is 34 inches, 2230 RPM. So let's see, this should take us down to about 115. Which appears to be coincident with VY. So this is about the speed that we would be doing if we were looking to cross the country and go all the way to California. So it's a little bit slower than max cruise. So we were doing about 143, and now we're doing about 126. It's interesting. Last time I tested this put us at 115. So I'm not sure what the reasoning is for the performance change or performance difference, but I can tell you for the max cruise, or I should say for the maximum range test that I did, it was 2550 RPM and 35 inches gave maximum range. That's Cleveland. So I'm going to aim to touch down, ironically enough, parallel to that runway in Lake Erie. Okay, going out over the lake. Autopilot, heading off, altitude off, and completely off. Turn track IR on for this to help me with the navigation here. Usually like to use it because it causes me to stress my neck and then it starts to crane. But it's really helpful when you're trying to line up a turn. Like now, we should be using a little bit more rudder here. Alright, we're all lined up. So descent checklist, it's real easy. Throttle idle. 3, 2, 1, now. Propeller low RPM. 3, 2, 1, now. Lights as desired. And this thing will dive. Let it do it. This is not a stall. Keep that in mind. It looks really bad. Just let it do its thing. It's good to keep the airspeed about 125. We're going to aim to put the flaps down at 122. All right, I think we're descending a little bit fast. So when that happens, the thing to do is to bring the propeller up into the landing configuration, so that's high RPM, and put the manifold pressure at about 20 inches. and then just give it a little bit of a tug to pull it up, slow the descent rate here. And there's our final destination. Alright, we're below 120. It's very hard for me to read, but we're about 117, so we can put flaps down 10 degrees. Next event will be when we get to about 110. When we hit 110, which we're right about there, we'll put flaps down to 20 degrees. And then at 100, we'll go to 30 degrees. For landing, you want the propeller to the high RPM. We're already there. Manifold pressure, 20 inches. And we're there. Alright, so we're still doing a little bit fast. We're like 105, so at this point I'm going to start trimming up a little bit more, get our speed below 100. That'll let us get down that 30 degrees of flaps. Alright, there's 100. So we'll go 30 flaps. So on final approach, keep the speed about 100 and roll out to land at 90. And it's very important that you land with 90 mile per hour speed, because if you get too slow, you'll have too high a descent rate, and then you will actually crash in the game. So you have to be really careful. So we'll wait until we get down to about tree height. When we reach tree height, we'll get into ground effect and then slowly lower power. We do have the option of 45-degree flap, but I find that that's not really useful unless you're trying to make a very steep approach. Alright, so we'll go ahead and transition into ground effect right here. And we'll pull power back and keep the nose relatively high. Alright, chop power, flaps up, and propeller minimum speed. Alright, it's extremely important when you're coming in to not come in with too high a descent rate. You could probably tell on final we switched simulations. I actually crashed the first time. I haven't exactly perfected it, and to be fair, there is no POH, so I have to find this or learn this as I go. So I find coming in at flaps 30 and 90 for about the touchdown speed tends to work the best. Alright, now let's see how we can get in here. Let's see, we want to go for that pier. So at this point, we can shut down. Well, actually, let's start up the APU. So let's see, APU 1 on, 2 on, and start APU. All right, and then we'll cut 3 and 4. And cut 5 and 6. So now we're on 4 engines. And I can try to do this, but I'm probably going to have... Yeah, I'm going to have to switch controls. I have a special taxi profile that I use that disables the yoke's throttle to allow me to maneuver like this. So let's use a little bit more throttle, say 1600 RPM. Oh wait, I need to bring my propeller back up again. I was gonna say, there we go. Propeller high RPM for taxi. In fact, I should probably do the after landing list here. Remember, put the flaps up when you land. Alright, cowl flaps, those are open. Lights as desired, they're fine. APU on. So if you want to fly this plane regularly, I highly advise that you practice landings a whole bunch. This was probably my 3rd landing and my 2nd crash, so that obviously tells me that, you know, I can't expect to wing it. I'm gonna have to keep trying it until I really get the procedure down. It's really tough when you're trying to land into a area that's really tight. When you've got plenty of room to land, it's fine. But if you're trying to get into like a small mountain lake, you really got to perfect that landing rollout, because you eat up distance real quick in ground effect. Alright, let's shut down 1 and 2. And we'll shut down 7 and 8. Look at that. Alright, mags off. All cowl flaps closed, because we don't want seabirds getting in there. And let's just confirm that they're closing. Yes, they are. So this is what it looks like when one is in motion. It's pretty cool. You can see it advancing as the flap closes. And when they're all doing this, it's quite a sight to behold. Alright, those are all closed up. Next we'll go for the main tank valves. Now, don't touch these until you're done with the APU. If you shut them down first, it'll cause the APU to shut off. But we're pretty much done with that now, so at this point, we'll go up here, we'll turn the landing lights off and the position lights off, and we'll turn the avionics switch off. And of course, that's going to trigger this thing, the logbook. And of course it's only going to give me credit for everything that happened after we crashed the first time, so get good at that to avoid resets like that. Alright, we'll shut the APU off, so APU 1 off and 2 off. And then let's see, that's the APU generators, so the actual APU switches are here. Now we're done. At that point, we'll turn the tank valves off. We'll turn all generator fields off. And there's no lights left running, so then battery off. That is it. We are completely shut down here in Cleveland. So one neat thing with this is it will actually simulate some stabilization floats. That can be attached to the bottom when the craft is not in motion. I believe that's one of those things that you would check with the here we go, hide unhide external buoys. So if I do that, it'll hide them. If I check it, then it'll show them. So that's a pretty neat capability that exists. And then of course you can hide all the autopilot stuff, and it'll be like it's not even there. The thing is though, it's impossible to fly other than pilotage. There's no radios. It's basically what you see in front of you is what you get, minus the radio compass, which just doesn't work, period. None of this works either. Let's see, and you can see the fuel tank there. I believe it loaded up where it was when I reset the flight. So we're at 428.32 times 8, 428.32. I can't math. 428.32 times 8 means we have 3,426 on board. That seems a little bit low to be 42%. I think something is amiss there. But if we do it the other way, this flight from Cleveland, so this is a distance of 285 nautical miles, and it used 8% of the fuel. So if I do 285 divided by 0.08, that means the full fuel run distance in theory would have been 3,562 miles, which is probably accurate. I found that the full range of this aircraft is somewhere around 3,300 miles. Granted, that's not counting any headwinds. And because this plane is moving so slowly through the air, any headwind adds a significant amount of slowdown. It can cut your range in half, or if it's a tailwind, it can double your range. So keep that in mind as well. So I think I was calculating that I would burn 1,584 gallons. So if I do 14 to 80 times 0.08, it looks like we burned something like 1,142 gallons. So not sure what's going on there. Maybe it's a sim update or something. But it's something that something that is still in flux, because I'm still learning this aircraft. It's still very new to me. So yeah, unfortunately, something that never became gigantic flying boats that could take you from one downtown to another downtown. I mean, you know, you can see we're maybe 3 or 4 blocks from the higher buildings of Cleveland, and this is extremely convenient. Granted, to be fair, Cleveland has it a lot better than most other airports in the sense that, you know, the airport is right next to the city. You can hop in pretty quick to a plane with the airport being this close. So yeah, that's the Spruce Goose. So in conclusion, it's a great aircraft. You just have to be mindful that, you know, when your engines are moving, you're going, and sometimes even, as you can see, the float has now kind of scooted into the pier, and I'm not sure if it's going to end up crashing the simulation eventually. So those are things to keep in mind. I don't think there's like a anchor button that you can press to just have the craft stop moving. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any way to lock it down. And then yeah, just be really careful on that landing rollout, that you're not coming in too quick. The key is slightly nose high attitude at 90, and 90 is important for getting that slow descent rate as slow as you can. Before that, you want to get into ground effect. That helps to prevent the need to flare, and then just as you lose speed, you increase the attitude a little bit, and pull your power back to make sure that you don't come in too quickly. So yeah, hope to do plenty more episodes with this aircraft. Thank you all for joining me. I've been Dr. Aeronautics, and I will see everybody next time. Bye bye.